Hi everyone, my name's Sean Austin. I'm a volunteer hunt master with the Tennessee Wildlife Federation, and I'm here today just to kind of talk about scouting with you a little bit, what to look for, ideally when to look for it, and what to do once you find it. So we're gonna walk down this trail. We're currently in East Tennessee, right along the Tennessee River. So there's public ground everywhere. We're gonna show you how to find it and how to navigate it. So part of scouting can actually begin before you even get into the field. You can do e-scouting or computer scouting. And what I typically use is an app called onX, but there's all sorts of different apps out there you don't have to pay for. Some of them, you could even just use Google Imagery. But what I look at when I'm doing my e-scouting or my pre-scouting online is I'll look for water features, terrain features, and if I'm hunting public, I want to find little nooks. You can't tell a lot by vegetation, but you can tell that vegetation's there. So we're going to kind of go over a little bit on what to look for, what it's going to look like on a computer screen, and really what it is. So to start off, I'll go into the topo mode on this map. So what I'll typically look for is I'll look for a place where those lines are stacked tight on one side and then stacked tight on another side, and that'll be a draw, that'll be a natural funnel. So if I scroll up here, and we've got a water feature in the base of it here, a creek. So that could be a good way to intercept deer. But with the scouting, what we can do is just try to position ourselves as effectively as possible. And one thing that you want to look at are edges and then that subtle shift in that habitat. So what you'd want to key in on is somewhere where there's a transition in habitat. But what I really like is this string of trees that connects to this other field, this other little patch of trees, and it cuts down and then makes a little block right here. And then also we've got a point there. So if I had a day to walk in and scout, I'd really want to focus in on this area. To me, that looks good. All right. Along with saving you time, one thing that you can utilize these apps for is not just looking at the terrain itself. A lot of them have different features, so you could save a location. You could identify it as, a tree stand or a water hole. There's all sorts of different possibilities with that. So you can save time and save legwork scouting, as well as keeping your scent out of an area that you're wanting to hunt. But you do need to put boots on the ground, so that's what we're going to go do next. All right, so this is late October, but if you look above me here, you'll see these little orange balls on this tree. And maybe something that's easier to identify just as you're walking is this thick, almost alligator type back bark. This is a persimmon tree, okay? And it's soft mass, it's a fruit bearing tree. And this is deer candy. So anytime I see one of these, especially if I see a cluster of them that are producing fruit, I'll mark it either on my paper map or on my app. And then that way I know, hey, come mid-September through October, this might be a good place to check out because more than likely the deer are going to visit this. And as it so happens, we're on public land here, but there's corn planted back behind me. So if this area wasn't such a heavy human utilized area, this is somewhere I'd like to set up. And it might be somewhere that I would set up on, a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, sometime middle of the week. That way I'm not, bothered by so many other hunters and I'm not bothering them either. Trails are another thing to really look at when your boots on the ground. So it doesn't look like much, but you can see this grass is kind of bent over. And I like to pay attention also to which way that grass is bent over. That'll kind of tell you which direction the animals are traveling. These worn out trails on a field, it's not worn down to the point of mud, but you can definitely identify this as a possible travel path for your deer, for your wildlife. And then looking at it this way, so that persimmon tree's back there, there's cornfield right there, and then it looks like this trail and a couple other of these go in to the woods right about to where that dead or dying tree is over there. So I might follow this out just to see if there's a good tree for me to set up there. So I'd try to find an oak, some other fruit bearing tree, or if I can't find any of those, just find where these trails converge. You know, deer don't necessarily use the same trail every day, but they are creatures of habit. And if you can figure out what those habits are, those travel paths, and set up on them, you're gonna set yourself up for success. So they've got cover, they've got the concealment, and then they've got food. They've got some food in here now, and then they also have food all around them. So that's what makes this, you know, good habitat. So another good thing to look for is scrapes and rubs. So this would be an example of a scrape. And a scrape is where a deer will they'll typically break a branch or bend a branch down, or if it's low enough, they'll just go ahead and use it as it is. But they'll break this, they'll rub their orbital glands around it. Okay, that way they can smell who's been there and done what. They'll rake it with their antlers sometimes. Sometimes they sure enough lick it, and they'll paw the ground. If I was to look at this as it is now, I'd say, wow, that looks really fresh. It hasn't rained in a while here, but there's no leaves. It's been raining leaves, just not moisture. And they might use it one time, or it might get used a whole number of times by a whole number of different deer. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I don't like to get my scent too close to these scrapes, but I will kind of get as close as I can just to see, okay, are there any good sized tracks in that scrape? So we're gonna keep going down here and try to find a good setup to make with our trails, with all the scouting that we've done, so we can hopefully have a good deer hunt. So what I'm doing now is we're on the convergence of a couple trails. We've got some thicker marshy, what I would assume to be bedding habitat over there. We've got our food sources back that way. We're in a narrow strip of woods, and we're kind of to where it pinches down pretty tight. So the deer, if they're gonna be moving within these hardwoods, within this treed area, you know, they're gonna be focused in on our area, on our position rather. And I'm thinking currently like a bow hunter. So I don't need to be able to see 100 or 200 yards because I'm not gonna shoot that far. I want the deer as close to me as possible, and I'm doing everything I can to put the odds in my favor. So what I would like to look for is a tree that has cover that I could set my tree stand up on, or an elevated place to where I could shoot from the ground, but I could actually look over all this woody stuff down here. You know, I could probably climb that tree with a climber pretty easily. Okay, I could also kind of tuck in. There's this down tree over here. I could probably figure out a way to tuck in there to where I could get a shot. So maybe I take the time, you know, I know this is the area. Maybe I'd identify a couple trees that are straight enough to where I could climb them or could hang a stand easily. Right now, the wind's kind of hitting me in the back of the neck here. We've got a south wind today. So with that in mind, I might set up closer to that marsh area, but then again, I kind of identified that from e-scouting and just getting boots on the ground as being more of a bedding area. So maybe what I would do is I would identify the trees like I have, and I'd wait for a north wind. I'd wait to hunt this on a north wind and try to catch them in the morning in particular, coming from bedding to food, or in the afternoon, bedding to food. Just whichever way I really feel like the deer are gonna move. Set yourself up to utilize their corridors, their travel habits, identify those bedding locations and the food locations, and just set yourself up to intercept those animals as they're traveling to and from, and try to get them as tight as possible. You know, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an area to where the deer feel comfortable. They're transitioning from bedding to food or from food to bedding, and they might very well utilize this corridor to run does, chase does, bed down with does during the rut, which is right here all already upon us. So this would more or less be my top spot. You don't have to hit the nail on the head right off the bat. Just do your e-scouting if you can. Get out here, get boots on the ground before season if at all possible, and then, you know, continue scouting while you're hunting. Scouting isn't just one particular thing, but it's just drawing on your knowledge base, your observations, what you think is going to happen, what you realize is actually happening, and put it all together, and you're sure enough going to have a successful season. So again, this was tailored to more of the beginner hunter. I hope that this gives you some confidence to get out there, and please do get out there. I mean, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to bump deer. You're going to hang your set in the wrong spot. I do it all the time still. But get out there, enjoy the public lands that we have, enjoy the private land if you're privileged to do so. And another good resource for you to utilize are people that are more experienced than you. It might be the person down the road that goes hunting. It might be somebody in your church that you know, or it could be our friends over at the Tennessee Wildlife Federation. Check them out, check out their hunting and fishing academy, and I look forward to seeing you out in the field.